You know how it is, you want the essential information, the important stuff, really, without getting lost in just a flood of details.
Right.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing today. We're diving straight into a really complex situation over in the Arcady sector.
Fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and our sources looks like detailed reports, maybe personal logs. They paint this picture of rising tensions. You've got the Cordracites and the Melacron.
Long-standing friction there.
Definitely. But there are these whispers, a possible third player pulling strings from the shadows.
Hmm.
So, our mission today, let's unpack this mess, try to understand how things went so wrong, who this potential hidden actor might be, and pull out the key events that push this whole sector right to the edge of war.
And what strikes me right away is how a conflict that maybe had manageable roots, based on old issues, could just be deliberately set ablaze by someone else.
Yeah.
Our sources really detail that history between the Cordracites and the Melacroni. They're major players in the Arcade sector. So this Calagian Congress on Debenius II, it was a huge deal, a really delicate attempt to sort of dial things back.
Right, this Congress was supposed to be the place, right. First Minister Gerrid Thul of the Beniari trying to get these two groups who've historically been at odds to find some common ground.
A tall order.
Yeah, and right from the start, old arguments were flaring up again, especially about that Melacroni colony on Tepper 6.
Always a flashpoint.
And it seems Cullen, who sounds pretty sharp, started noticing things weren't quite right. Little changes in how known terrorist groups were operating.
Uh-huh. The Cordracite Quasoc, the Melacroni Melacre.
Exactly, groups with a known history, but their tactics seemed off. And that made him think maybe someone else was stirring the pot?
That's a key insight really early on. The old issues, territory, resources, those were known. But Cullen sensing a third party, that changes the game.
How so? What did he notice?
Well, he saw it wasn't their usual style. I mean, normally the Quasoc and the Melacre, they'd engage in, let's say, intimidation, maybe some violence, but they'd claim it for political goals.
Oh.
And then you've also got Governor Gerrid Thul showing up from the Thallonian Empire, just an observer at the Congress.
Observer.
Yeah.
Seems important later.
His initial chats with Captain Picard of the U.S.S. Stargazer are noted down. Seemed like he was trying to look involved, projecting that image.
But instead of making progress, the reports show the arguing just got worse at the Congress, like way worse.
Yeah, it really spiraled.
Almost like it was meant to fail. It ends with the Cordracite delegation just walking out.
Which basically killed any hope of a diplomatic fix right there.
So diplomacy's dead in the water. Cullen thinks someone else is involved. What happens next? How do they figure out what's really going on?
Well, that walkout was the turning point. Diplomacy failed. So Picard, acting on Cullen's concerns, decides they need to investigate this third-party theory discreetly. It's a shift, you see, from open talks to trying to find information covertly.
Right. So Picard pulls together an away team. Commanders Ben Zoma, Crusher, Ensign Tuvok, others too.
A good team.
And they start digging into past terrorist attacks, looking really closely at the methods, the weapons.
Patterns, right. The historical MO for the Quasoc and the Melacre was often, well, symbolic. Make a statement, damage property, maybe some casualties, sure, but they usually took credit.
Like that ritual slaughter blade sometimes used by Cordracite groups. Or finding a bomb with a clear Cordracite message attached, even if it didn't go off.
Exactly. Those acts were about sending a message, claiming ownership of it, veer and recognition.
But these latest attacks were different, weren't they? Reports say much more brutal.
Viciously so.
And crucially, nobody was taking responsibility, plus the weapons. They were taking the weapons with them.
Yeah.
And using energy signatures nobody recognized.
Yes, that's the critical difference.
Yeah.
More lethal, no claims, which is totally unlike them, and unknown tech. All huge red flags pointing to someone new.
Someone with a very different, maybe more destructive agenda.
Precisely. It immediately made them question if the old groups were really behind the latest violence.
Okay, so this is where it gets kind of amazing. A name pops up. Bin Nedrak.
Yes.
Tuvok, with that incredible Vulcan memory of his, remembers a Melacroni crime family on Debenius 6, like, decades ago. 55 years, the report says. And the leader's name.
Bin Nedrak.
That detail from so long ago. How do they connect that to the present?
Well, Tuvok memory, pulling from old crime reports, was the first piece. Then they discovered that the grandson of that old crime boss, also named Bin Nedrak, was seen leaving Melacron V right after a top Melacron official was assassinated.
The Jaha of laws and enforcements. A big
A
deal.
very big deal. Suddenly you've got a potential link to organized crime, maybe a motive completely separate from the Cordracite Melacron fighting.
So Crusher and Tuvok need to find this grandson. They go undercover. Destination: Dubinius VI. Sounds like a bit of a
Right.
rough place.
The hub for less than legal activities, let's say.
Yeah. They get disguises, infiltrate a couple of spots. The den sounds like a proper dive bar.
Rough and tumble is how it's described.
And the House of Comfort, which apparently caused Commander Crusher a moment's pause. He thought it was a brothel.
Yes, but to Tuvok's noted relief, it turned out to be a bathhouse.
A bathhouse. Okay, well, maybe slightly less dramatic than Crusher feared. So what did they find there?
Well, in the den, they tracked down someone named Pudris Bar, described as a former writer for the older Nedrak, basically worked for him under his control.
Okay, an inside connection.
And Bar points them towards a Beniari named Bidrik Ona, suggesting this network wasn't just Melacron, it crossed species lines.
So Ana is the next link in the chain. They find him at a dance hall. But things go south pretty quick, don't they?
They do. They get captured by guards. Guards working for someone named Mendan Abis.
Ah, another new name. And there's this Orion slave girl, Grace. She tries to warn them.
Yes, Grace. She seems like just background scenery at first, but she steps up, tries to help them. It's a really key moment.
Shows how information can come from unexpected places. But they're captured by Abapai's people.
Right, and now they're tangled up with a much more dangerous part of whatever conspiracy is unfolding.
And this, I guess, is where the really big piece falls into place. Governor Gerrid Thul, the observer.
The plot twist.
It turns out he's been pulling the strings all along, secretly trying to push the Cordracites and Melacron into a full-blown war. Why?
For his own reasons, it seems. Personal gain, maybe power for the Thallonian Empire, the chaos. It's a classic move, isn't it? Create a crisis, externalize blame.
And he's incredibly ruthless about it. He engineers the destruction of that Melacron colony on Tabor 6.
Devastating.
And makes it look like the Cordracites did it. A false flag operation. Just pouring fuel on the fire.
Exactly. Deliberately pushing them past the point of no return. Calculated and cold.
And it gets darker. He's using his own son, this Mendan Abais, who captured Crusher and Tuvok.
Yes.
Thul is using him as a pawn, making him carry out the assassination of the Jaha, the bombing of that commuter shuttle.
Manipulating his own son. That shows you just how far Thul was willing to go. His ambition overrode everything, even family. Mendan Abais wasn't just some rogue. He was a tool for his father's plan, and maybe didn't even realize the full picture.
Just awful. Okay, so back to Crusher and Tuvok. They're captured, but Grace tries to help. What happens?
Grace comes up with a plan to help them escape. She shows incredible courage.
As it were.
They escape, yes. But tragically, Grace is killed by Thul's forces for helping them.
Oh, no!
A terrible loss. But before she died, she got word to Captain Picard. Crucial information, confirming Thul's direct involvement.
So her sacrifice wasn't entirely in vain. She exposed him.
Absolutely. Her warning is what allows Picard to understand the real threat. It sets up this unavoidable confrontation between the Stargazer and Thul's ship.
A direct showdown looming. But the story isn't quite over, is it? What about Mendan Abais, the son?
Well, it seems he finally figures it out, realizes how badly his father has used him.
He confronts him.
He tries to warn Thul, perhaps. The reports are a bit unclear on his exact motive, but it leads to Abbas's ship actually engaging his father's ship. A desperate, maybe tragic attempt to intervene.
Wow. Meanwhile, back on the diplomatic front.
First Minister Khulun plays a blinder. He manages to delay the Calisian Congress again, buys just enough time for the truth to come out before war erupts. Really skillful diplomacy under pressure.
So things are happening fast now. Abai's turning on Thul, Khulun stalling for time. How is Thul stopped?
It becomes a coordinated effort. The Stargazer and a Beniari vessel work together. They manage to apprehend Thul.
Got him.
He's taken into custody. And then Khulun lays out all the evidence to the reconvened Calisian Congress, make sure everyone knows what Thul did, and importantly, acknowledges Grace's sacrifice.
The truth comes out, and Ben Nedrak, the grandson.
He gets picked up too.
Yeah.
Starfleet apprehends him on Melacron II, so that loose end is tied up. Seems like some measure of justice prevails.
It does. And the reports even give us a little personal touch at the end. Commander Crusher apparently told his wife, Beverly, about the mission.
Yes, including the slight misunderstanding about the bathhouse.
Which she found amusing, apparently.
Seems so. A moment of lightness in a very dark affair.
But there's also this little hint. Thul, in prison, interacting with someone called Lady Melacron, suggesting he might still be scheming.
It's an intriguing loose end, isn't it? It implies that even captured, Thul's capacity for manipulation might not be over. Leaves you wondering.
Okay, so let's step back. We've gone through the reports, the investigation, the betrayals. What are the big takeaways for you?
Well, the clearest thing is how a conflict that looked like old enemies fighting again was actually deliberately ignited by an outsider. Sol, the Thallonian governor, manipulating events for his own gain.
Yeah, it's a stark reminder, isn't it? How easily tensions can be weaponized, and how vital it is to look past the obvious narrative.
Definitely. And the surprises, too. Thul's sheer ruthlessness. Grace, the Orion slave girl, her intelligence and bravery.
All right, sacrifice, yeah.
And Mendon Epis, such a complex, tragic figure caught in his father's web. It shows how unpredictable people can be in these huge events.
This whole deep dive into the Arcade sector, it really gets you thinking, doesn't it? When we look at other conflicts, things that seem straightforward on the surface, you have to wonder, what other hidden forces might be at play? What unseen hands could be guiding events? And how can any of us, just trying to make sense of things, get better at seeing through the layers, discerning the truth when there's so much potential for deception?
That's the core question, isn't it?
It really is. Well, that's all we have time for on this deep dive. Thanks for joining us. We hope this look into the Arcada situation gives you something to think about, those dynamics of power, manipulation, and the constant search for truth. Maybe something to explore further on your own.